Testing. Okay, I am just experimenting. This is the second time in 1 week I've used this screen, or it is a screen saving device that I've used this software. And this is June Wagner. I am giving you just a little more in-depth insight with the help of one of my in-seat students, Anita Patton, who has graciously allowed us to use her paper as an example. I have many papers from this class that are e- along these lines. This is an excellent paper, but since she's the first that got back to me, I'm going to share this one. First of all, I just want to remind you that some of the elements that you'll find in your chapter 2 in the inquiry book, as well as if you Google, etc., for rhetorical analysis, which is your paper that's due in a couple weeks, include the motivation of the author, the context in which this was written or spoken, the writer's purpose, the thesis, that's the main idea, of course, and then how does the author back up the thesis using good logos, which is logic, and that involves induction, deduction, avoiding logical fallacies, knowing the audience, having strong, and I backing up the bus just a bit, you do not use logos, you use good examples of logic to create or achieve logos. Ethos, these are all Greek words. Ethos actually is how we get our word ethics, and that's how you develop that by giving good statistics, examples, etc. And those two go very much hand in hand. Pathos is more emotion. It's not necessary for college papers, but it can be used. Just be sure you use it sparingly and honestly. Other things to be aware of as you analyze rhetoric, which is the wording of a speech or a paper, are the style of the author. Is it informal? Is it just say somebody speaking to an audience of peers, or is he using diction that includes jargon that's just extremely hard for anybody outside a certain profession to understand? Is it informal? Is it college level writing or speaking? Does the author use a lot of figurative language and figures of speech such as metaphors and similes? And who comes to mind on this in our list is Martin Luther King. What's the tone and the attitude? The attitude of the author towards the subject determines the tone of the writing. It could be facetious, sarcastic, humorous, etc. And these are just some of the items to consider, but I'm going to start with this paper. First of all, I want to point out that Anita does have the heading for MLA correct, name of the student, teacher, class, and the date, military style. And then in the upper right hand corner, she inserted the header, which typically you want to change to this also to Times New Roman 12 font. I noticed something as I was looking at this a minute ago, and I will probably find things because I always do when I go over things out loud, but this should also be capitalized, the O. Concerns and Solutions for Our Nation. This is based on Ben Carson's speech, and so I'm going to actually read it and point out some good things about it. Dr. Benjamin Carson was one of the guest speakers of the 61st National Prayer Breakfast held in Washington, D.C. on February 7, 2013. And I'm going to probably butcher this, but it looks like Michael Grabowski from the Christian Post reported hundreds of people from 160 different nations, and all 50 states came to the breakfast. President Barack Obama and his wife Michelle, as well as Vice President Joe Biden, were also attendees. The National Prayer Breakfast is an annual event held in Washington, D.C. on the first Thursday of February and is organized by the Fellowship Foundation, a Christian-centered organization on behalf of the United States Congress. Politics and our nation are the most common speech topics, so she's given the setting and the context. Dr. And notice she includes, she did some research, Solomon Carson Sr., is a renowned pediatric surgeon with strong political aspirations. His speech certainly demonstrated a political background. The speech's purpose was to inform the audience about his concerns with the current education developments, and I would maybe say educational there, the type of individuals who make up our government, our national debt, and some things to avoid. You want to stay away from this, even though it is our country. Try to stay away from first person. So I would say the national debt, the current healthcare system, and how these issues could possibly be improved upon or even resolved. Carson reflects upon his deep religious beliefs and an irrepressible faith in the founding principles of our nation to communicate his ethos to his audience. So right here, she's picked upon one of the elements, which is his credibility, his believability, his character. With intertwining humor, that's his style, he articulates his pathos well and keeps his listeners, and I'm not sure you would articulate pathos per se. I'm being a little lenient with some of these papers. You would articulate your position on something or your views, emotions, and then that creates the pathos. He keeps his listeners interested and active throughout his speech. This also, and I would change that to turns to keep in present tense with MLA, out to be a suitable way to enhance his message. And the imminent and serious concerns without sounding boring and unappealing. So again, talking about his style, his approach. He provided, and we want to change that to an S. I'm actually going to save these and re-upload this, and I will put this in the shell for your class as well. He provides statistics and applicable stories as testimony and support for his logos. Now, and this actually, not just logos, logos is logic. This would actually support ethos even more than that. The 4 Bible verses he cites from the beginning of his speech are setting the context to his message. The framework accentuates right from the beginning Carson's very pronounced ethos. The foundation also sets a religious and conservative tone for his entire dialogue and its contents, and is particularly effective within the prayer breakfast setting. It supports his character, reputation, beliefs, and desire for honesty. And when you have a list, you still, unless the last 2 act as one unit, you want that comma. Carson emphasizes his ethos by talking about the lost art of open and honest communication, due to the constant fear of possibly offending somebody who may have a different opinion of feelings about the subject matter. So it's being aware of his audience. Being forthright and stating exactly what one means, and I appreciate that she said one instead of you, because we don't want to use that, as you guys are learning this week, is how people need to communicate with each other. Political correctness, meaning to change how one expresses an opinion to a more polite or sensitive way, does not provide honest and open communication. With this declaration, he speaks directly about the way, and this is again how he presents the message, about the style, about the way, that is his style, about the way our leaders, administration, and media, and I change that again to America's leaders, have promoted the way Americans communicate. I'm not going to change every one of these. People are no longer making use of one of, okay, now this is what we call an embedded quote, and this is good. You want to either paraphrase most of your paper or use these short embedded quotes. She just took a part of his speech and embedded it. Notice she didn't have to capitalize anything, and she didn't have to indicate it was embedded quote because it just flows after the preposition. It's the object of the prepositional phrase of our country's founding principles, the freedom of thought and expression. And she did follow the rule of not putting the comma here or even a period there, but putting it at the end here. She's using a transcript for this, so that's why she could use the abbreviation for paragraph. And this is the motion again. To emphasize the pathos of this particular part of his message, Dr. Carson uses a joke about speaking out regardless of being politically correct with the words we use. To provide logos, he adds respectfulness, sorry about that, towards people with whom we disagree. I would put, instead of the comma here, I would put he adds that, because it makes it a little easier to understand. Respectfulness towards people with whom we disagree is a necessity. We must begin to talk about matters that are of importance regardless of political correctness, or advancement will no longer be possible. One of those vital matters he emphasizes is education. Dr. Carson does not boast about his own educational achievements, but rather openly admits to being a lazy student with bad grades, and he was. At first, a bad attitude and bad temper at first. And she did put in the words at first. And you can see that too, and I'm sorry, I am going to actually throw this phone out of the room here so it's not so loud. All Alrighty, now my son can put up with that. Anyway, again, he reveals his strong ethos. And oh, I started to say, by the way, you can find out about his life story in a fascinating video that is on YouTube also that you can watch for free. It's about his life, and it is called Gifted Hands because it shares his story. It's basically a rags to riches story. Again, he reveals his strong ethos by stating how he values, and I would change that to values because we want to stay in present tense, the support and encouragement he received from his under undereducated mother. And she was amazing. She was actually 13 when she got married, one of 26 children, had to work 3 jobs to support her 2 sons, and she would not let them slack off. I can't talk enough about how amazing she was. She made them read books, and both sons turned out. She would not let them be enabled in any way, and they both turned out very successful. Carson explains how and by the way, this essay ties in very nicely with the one that you read on Frederick Douglass. Carson explains how this fact turned around his educational career and consequently his life. By reading books and educating himself, he discovered, because that is a past tense act, how he himself was the person in charge of his life and decisions. Carson is extremely concerned about education, and I don't see a need for the comma there, and provides proof for his logos with the poor statistics of high school and college graduates. He highlights more of his logos by revealing to his audience how our inclination to get educated went from superior in the early 1800s to a more comfortable level in order to promote self-esteem along with quick and easy success. A nation cannot thrive with a less educated society, and I would hyphenate this as the compound adjective here before the noun. Unfortunately, and I appreciate she remembered the comma after the transition, there is no humor to be found in these numbers and statements. So talking again about the style approach. To lead the audience into the next segment, he reminds them how our nation was created with the help of several educated men. She didn't just say, Carson believes our nation, she shows how he works that into his speech purposefully. To convey logos, Carson rightfully points out how our current government is mostly made up of lawyers and not laced with, I like that word choice, enough scientists, engineers, and doctors. He again uses humor about lawyers and law school to stress pathos and the importance of his argument. Carson faults this situation with the fact, and she's referring to, I'd be a little more clear here, that to explain what this situation exactly is, how this is a situation, with the fact that we do not reward superior academic achievement and express more ethos by stating how wrong this behavior is and how much it saddened him. Sports have the upper hand when it comes to recognition of success. Dr. Carson's logical solution to this problem is, again, a nice embedded quote, scholarship for superior academic achievement and demonstration of humanitarian qualities. And again, this shows where it came from on the transcript. To receive a scholarship, I probably put a comma here, a student has to be, and we want to keep that in present because it's still ongoing, not only educated, but was also okay, I think what he's trying to say that to receive a scholarship, a student should be not only educated, but also required to actively care about other human beings. By accentuating how these kinds of recognitions are especially needed in low-income and underprivileged schools, and again, I would hyphenate this right here before the compound adjective before the noun, when the education dropout rate is even higher, not sure how to read this, where the education is even higher, he displays more of his pathos. Okay, I think she really needs that comma here, if I'm reading this right. Carson himself is proof for the fact of how, and I would change the for to of the fact, well then you have of twice. I would just get rid of the fact and just say proof of, sorry, you can see how I grade now.